Hi, this is Ahava. I'm making this video as a continuation of my video regarding the experiences that I had experienced through the years, and I mentioned in my last video that I'll be making a video about Fatima, and this is it. This is the video about Fatima. Well, to start with, I was my real purpose in going to Europe was to visit Lourdes and Fatima. And in all honesty, Compostela was only a strategic site. It wasn't planned at all. And obviously, I also wanted to really go to Rome because I wanted to fulfill a promise I made to someone that when I'm able to and I'm given if the Lord allows me to and bless me with the resources and opportunity, I would visit. And so this all happened in 2008 November, and so my itinerary was Lourdes, France, then France to Rome, Rome to Compostela, Compostela to Fatima. So I spent 3 days, I think, in Lourdes. Yeah, 2, 3. I really like it there also, but it was so cold because it's already autumn and and it's so cold. It's nice that I have this thermal clothing with me, but once you removed it, and then the place I stayed, although there's a heater, but the heat, the coldness is defeating the heat in so many ways. So, but that was at the start. So I arrived at night, and then I was able to settle down and everything. In the morning, I went to Lourdes. I had to walk. Actually, my place is across. It's not actually across, but a few meters away from the grotto. It's like Elsie and the public market. That's how far the place I was staying is. The distance of the place where I'm staying from the grotto where the apparition of Our Lady took place. And I went there and prayed. It was really a remarkable moment also. My purpose there is actually to pray for reconciliation in so many ways. At that time, there was really conflict, and I was very much into it, and though everything went as according to plan, and that's why upon returning to the Philippines, I decided that I would not be leaving anymore because I've made that decision already, and I kind of, canceled everything that would actually enable me to travel again, and that's why but lo and behold, I went back to Israel in 2010. It's something that my decisions were not sustained, and obviously I was prompted to go to Israel in 2010. So, cutting the story short, I went to Lourdes, and then I went to Rome, fulfill my promise, and it's so remarkable because I've that closeness of that person, although we've not met physically, and yet when I was there, visiting, the his tomb, and praying each day that I was there, it's it's kind of remarkable because we haven't met physically, and yet when I arrive in his tomb, in under the Vatican, I felt that presence, I was inspired to visit several tombs, and that's why I realized and something is off with the tomb of Saint Francis of Assisi, because nada. There's nothing, and it puzzled me at the time, and I do not know, and I have no information about the controversy related to it before, and it only prompted me to research after. I mentioned this already in my other video, but when I arrived, because I wanted to bring flowers, and I hardly, I I barely arrived at Rome, and no one speaks English, straight English, and people feel obviously you're disoriented yet because everything is new. And I just prayed because I promised to bring flowers, and I was worried it might be too expensive. I might not be able to afford it. And I was praying, Lord, I hope I could find something that is beautiful and that is, something that is decent at least, and affordable, something like that. So upon arriving, because it was a train station, so it's like the train station in other places I've been. They are like a mall type place. So I asked around, and then it was a big place. I had to walk, and then I found the place, and then I found that beautiful flower, white flower and something, and so I bought it, and then I went immediately to, upon arriving, I immediately, after, I think after putting down my stuff at the Octaviano hostel, which is just several meters away from Vatican. When you come down, it's like LC and Lakeside, something like that. The distance, it's very near. So when I was praying, and then I found it, and then immediately I went there, and I was amazed immediately because I could feel this presence, and although he has parted already, and yet I felt the presence, and it's similar to the presence that I would be encountering when I visit Fatima. It's the same presence, because I prayed. I visited the tomb of the vision, the visionaries, and then Sister Lucia inside the church. So the presence are the same. And then when I went to Assisi, when I visited Saint Clare of Assisi, it's the same presence, and it's warm, and it's like a part of me responds to that presence. And that's why when I visited, I actually visited as Saint Clare before I proceeded to Assisi, or the crypta of no, I think I visited Assisi first, and then I proceeded to the Saint Clare, and that's why the contrast, and that's why I was so perturbed and not worried, but not confused also, but like, what? There is no presence, and as if it's just a plain, and yet when I went to Saint Clare, the same intensity and quality of presence, and when, mind you, because the the crypt of Saint Clare is underneath, and there's a spiral stair of some sort, if I'm not mistaken, and before you go down straight, and then it will like go spiral, and then you come to the thing. When I passed that phase and I was starting to spiral, it's there. I immediately felt it, that presence, and it's similar to the presence I described when I was in Ongpin. It's a similar presence in Compostela also. It's a similar presence. It's just that it's distinct in a little way, but more or less it's comparable. And then I was in the Vatican. That's where I would be. I would be spending time there and fulfilling my promise, because I wanted to, because what was weird about him is that although we weren't physically together, when he departed, I felt it. I don't know how, I was as if he said goodbye. I don't know, it's just he's someone that is so near to me, and I had this dream of him, I've written about it, I've reason to believe that it's in Castle Gandolfo, everything was white, and then it was overlooking a lake. I could see the lake in my dream. My dream was so vivid, because this was made known to me that I would meet him, and I was kind of, what, how, am I going to Rome, something like that, and lo and behold, because of the war in Iraq, that was made conscious to me that if the war is inevitable already, then I would be meeting him, but I didn't realize it was a meeting spiritually or in a dream, actually, but my consciousness was that I would meet him. So after that dream, I knew already that the Iraq war would be more or less inevitable, and it's unstoppable already. And that's why that was a few days before the war. I think a couple of weeks or a week before the war. And what was so weird about it is how vivid it was, He was so happy to see me, in the dream. And as if he knew me already in the dream. Because he was sitting It's like a sofa of some sort, but it's like a sofa, but it's not a sofa. It's a sofa like furniture, and behind him is a door which are like glasses with wood frame, small wood frame, white, and then that's why you could see the lake behind it. And I was the dream began. I entered the room. He was already seated. He couldn't stand, but he was about to stand. And I he was making gesture that when I entered the room, he wanted to stand, something like that. But I think I said or gestured something, not anymore. And then he could, because he couldn't stand, so I actually knelt in front of him, and he handed me something. And he in the dream we knew each other. Like, it's weird because there was no inhibition. There was no, on my part at least, I didn't feel like I might not be received, I might not know me, something like that. Something that is ordinarily felt by someone who hasn't met someone, physically. But in my dream, I never felt that way, as if I've known him for so long, something like that. And then that's why he was trying to stand up, and I think I made a gesture, no, no, don't, and something like that. And then he didn't ask me to kneel. I knelt on my own because he's going to stand up of some sort. So he just stayed seated, and then I knelt before him, and we were very close. The only thing that divides us is his knee. And he handed me a medal type of something, and there was an engraving on it. We had conversation before that, but it was a very fast dream. But after that, I kind of stood up to find a paper, because there is an inscription on the medal that I couldn't read for some reason, because it's glaring. It's glaring, and it's all gold. It's a gold medal, and the inscription is kind of glaring, so I couldn't see. So I was looking for a piece of paper to rub it, and perhaps I would be able to read it. So when I stood up to find the places, the entire, I find a place, a paper, but I was transported into this place where mirrors, everywhere were mirrors. And I was, actually, when I realized that I was in that mirror place, is when I read the inscription on the medal. There was this inscription, but I don't know what was, but in the dream, perhaps if I would be able to revisit the dream, I would remember what was inscribed on the medal. When I read that inscription, I suddenly found myself in this place where there are mirrors, full of mirrors. And then I was calling out for him. I was calling and calling out his name. And then all of a sudden, I found myself on top of a mountain, a very white mountain. And there was someone who was walking towards the top. And I was with someone. And the one that I'm with was someone who was wearing brown. brown vestment of some sort. And then I was calling, and then he was calling him also. And then what was so weird is it's him. And he was already going up. And we were calling, and then when, for one reason or another, I don't know if me or it's the other person who took my hand. I found my hand being held by the other person, and it's at the time when we called on him at the same time, he turned his face, and it was so very, I could still remember how he looked. It was so radiant, and he was so happy, and he looked at us, and he was using a yellow cane going up. It was as if he was at peace. He was at peace. And when we were obviously he disappeared, and then there are these boulders of bigger rock coming out of nowhere, and we found ourselves in a place where there are houses that are square, and I guess that's, I think, in Jerusalem, and different, and and that's why I always have this affinity with him. Actually, the affinity started in 2002. It's, I think, for one reason or another, he could hear me. I don't know how, but he's, each time and in 2004, his departure was made known to me, and exactly a year after he departed, after the event in the Holy Sepulchre, I was so exhausted. And I was calling on his name because I was made conscious that he's leaving, and him departing evokes this great grief and fear in me. And I couldn't understand back then, why am I so affected, Why am I so afraid? Something like that. And I only realize it now, why, but back then I was kind of wondering why. And the most touching moment was when, after the event in the Holy Sepulchre, because I knew then that he's leaving. And from then on, I was always, because before I went to Israel, I always, because most of the parishioners in Buena Park are very much an admirer of him. And during adoration, his picture will be placed on the front, in front of the tabernacle. And this, a part of me is become emotional, as if I knew already back then it's near. And that was way back in 2002. That his departure is nearing, and a part of me doesn't want him to go, in all honesty. And yet in the end, I felt, I don't know how, I felt his body is really, it's similar to Padre Antonio's experience, that I felt his body is no longer able to sustain his soul. And I felt that I don't know how true and how it's possible, if it's true. It's me who's keeping him here, and because when I was praying to the Lord, I asked him not to take him, in a way that is so profound. It's similar to Father Antonio's experience. It's just that with him, it's as if he knows me and that he hears me. And each time I pray, in so many ways, I could feel his, not necessarily like with Father Antonio, the physical pain, but his not in a physical way, because with Father Antonio I physically felt the suffering, but with him it's more of a spiritual one. It's, I go to here in, I went rather here in the Carmelite monastery every day, I think, or every morning. I was praying for him, and because I don't want him to go. I don't know why. There was a part of me that doesn't want him to go. And even after 2004, after being made conscious of his departure, and exactly a year after he did depart, I was really very much, and then the news of his suffering and his state was all over. And what's peculiar is that took place after I, in a way, accepted it. Because when I was a couple of days before his actual departure, we had this plex, and then we have I went to several days before that. I went to the Carmelite monastery here in Concepcion, and I prayed there, and yet the answer and consciousness is that he's leaving, and that I have to accept that he is leaving, and I cannot do anything about it. And in all honesty, when that consciousness came to me, I was crying. A part of me was so consumed with emotion. And then this consoling presence consumed me and put me to a calmness. And that's the time I actually accepted it. And then during the confession, I confessed that about it, trying to hold on to someone, and in fact, he should go already, because that's why I felt that I was keeping him here. I don't know how, and I don't know how real what's happening. Perhaps it's just my emotional attachment to him that is producing all this, but at that time it was so real that I, in so many ways, is keeping him here. And that's why when after that confession, which is the day that the news broke out, in the evening, and then I lay down and because they were already praying rosary at the St. Peter's, and then I fell asleep, and then some force woke me up, and I thought it was my mom. There was no one there, and then it prompted me to open the television, and it was announced. The time was very precise also, and I felt that he said, I just, perhaps that was, but it was so real to me, as if he said goodbye to me, and although we haven't, I don't even had a chance to meet him in person, but because when he came here, I was in college at that time. I wasn't that religious, honestly, and that's why I didn't bother to go when he visited the country back then. But I realized that there was a part of me that was very much connected to him, and he was there. I felt him, when he departed. And in a way, I'm consoled that if all I experienced was not a product of my own imagination and delusion, so to speak, and the events that I have narrated really happened as real as I have described it, and it is really amazing, because who am I to be visited and to bid farewell, and as if he bid farewell, because perhaps that's why I have reason to believe that he could hear me, because he knew how difficult it was for me, knowing that he would be leaving and departing, and perhaps this is only my rationalization. Perhaps if he really heard me, he wanted to say goodbye, and perhaps that's his way of thanking me for praying for him, and that's why I made a promise that I would visit his place of rest when I'm able to. So his departure happened in 2005. It took me 3 years to fulfill my promise, and that's the main reason why I had to go to Europe also, to fulfill that promise to him. And that's why when I arrived, I was so emotional. I don't know if I was sobbing, but even now I feel the emotion as if it's just yesterday. And that's one thing that is so remarkable and amazing about that is upon arriving I felt that presence. Each day I was there, I would spend perhaps 10 to 15 minutes there because there is a line, I have to give opportunity for others to come in. So what I do is I stay there, and then in the afternoon I would be coming back when there's no more or a few pilgrims, and I'll spend, I don't know, because we were so connected. We were so connected, as if he knows me. And who am I don't know. And that's why I fulfill my promise. Actually, in 2007, there was already a consciousness that I would be going to Rome. And lo and behold, the year after, I was in Rome, And I don't even have money back then. And I was like, how in the world would I be able to go there? And that's how remarkable the Lord works. If it hits really His will, everything will just fall into place. Like that flower, I was praying at the train, and then when I reached Termini station, and I was saying, Lord, I don't have still a flower, and I promised to bring flower. And then I just let myself be led, and I found the place. It's a decent flower, it's an affordable flower, and I know he would appreciate it, and I brought it there, and it was so exciting and so happy. That's one of my happy moments also, because I was able to fulfill my promise, and he was always, I don't know, I felt that he was always watching over me. It's weird, and that's why when he was alive, and when I went to Israel, I felt that he was watching over me even there, and that's why when I met Father Antonio, he reminded me of him because he's Polish also, and that's how it was, and that's why when he became a saint, I made this writing and everything, because I really couldn't understand why I was so attached to him, in a way that is far more intimate in so many ways, much closer than, it's like there's a part of me that is connected to him. And I know that it was a very difficult moment also for him, having that disease and everything. And I'm grateful that I was able to fulfill my promise. So after Rome, I went to Compostela, and Compostela is a place that I did not intended to go. It was just strategically located, and when I was checking the flight, it's expensive to go Rome to Fatima. It's expensive, and then I studied, if I go to Rome to Compostela plus the bus going to Fatima, it's still cheaper, and then I'm able to visit Compostela, so I decided to go to Compostela. And when I was there, as I mentioned, I was in the airplane, I was groggy, obviously, because I was so tired, because I had to, because the airport is not the FD's, there's another airport, it's Campiano, something like that, that you have to travel to it, and it's tiring, because it's several kilometers away from Rome, and it's tiring and it's stressing. So when I went to the airport, I was a little bit groggy already. And what's remarkable, I going back to the train with that Argentinian guy. He wanted me to stay in Rome, and a part of me wanted to stay there also. And yet I know if I would stay there, though I know if I would pray about it and ask the Lord, then I might be able to stay there if but if I stay there, then I might cause certain inconvenience with certain persons, and I'm already aware of that even back then, and that's why the very reason, one of the very reason of my travel is to be reconciled and to put certain things behind, and my staying there, as suggested by the Argentinian man, actually runs contrary to the very purpose of my travel. If I just wanted everything to be, a settled matter already, and that's why when the Argentinian man suggested stay here in Rome, he was so adamant, and yet there was a part of me that I was tempted, a part of me really, because I felt so at home there, especially in the Vatican and everything. And what's so funny is when I'm there, it's like time has no meaning. I feel time flies so fast, and that's why when that Argentinian man made that proposition, and we just embrace each other. And I knew already that perhaps he knows something, that but I cannot feed that. I've always maintained my position, and what has been decided in 2004, I have to uphold that even to the very end, and it is something that I had to abide with, and the basis is for the greater good, for the common good, I think, or for the greater good. That was the basis of that decision, and that's why when that Argentinian guy asked me to stay, I wanted to. Not because of, good things, but because I felt so at home. Not Rome, but there in the Vatican. Each morning when I went there, I feel so elated, so jovial, so many ways, as if I'm home, something like that, And then the night before I departed for Compostela, I just stared at the St. Peter's and stared at the room up there, and recall the words of the Argentinian guy, and yet I have to remain true to that which has been decided already, and I just didn't respond, because what will I say? If I say no, if I say yes, then I might be confirming or affirming something that is in his, that prompted him to say those things, and I was very much trying to avoid that. That's why I just did not respond. I think I just didn't respond, and he was a very nice person, I realized, and I think he's a priest. I just think he was. And when we were talking, there was this conviction in his eyes, especially when he wanted me to stay in Rome. That's why after I came from Rome, coming back, I couldn't sleep. I was so attached to Rome, to the Vatican, for more than a month. I had to visit this priest in some public colleges and have myself prayed over. And it's still not working. I couldn't eat. I couldn't, as if a part of me wanted to be there. But if I chose to, I would be abandoning everything that I have tried to avoid. And that's why it was a very hard decision. And for over almost 2 months, I wasn't able to eat regularly. I was as if some force wanted me to return to Rome, wanted me to stay there. And that part of me is like grieving. So sad, all those days. But if I had given to the preposition, looking back, would it be something that I would want to take place? No. I'm always guided with what was decided in 2004. And if I've abandoned that, then I would not be true to who I really am. And that's how I saw it, and that's why he was convincing me not to go anymore to Compostela and just stay in Rome. Stay there. Though I'm stronger there, more, I know. Perhaps that's why I'm not there. For the good of everything, and that's how I viewed it, that was one of the events that is so heavy. That's why I stayed at St. Peter's for almost, I think, 30 minutes. part of me knows that I won't be coming back there. At least the purpose why I visited the place was accomplished. And that's why me staying there would only undermine everything, I just looked at St. Peter for 30 minutes, I think, standing there, and then hearing the Argentinian's voice in my head, And I just went, and then after that I arrived in Compostela, and that was a very beautiful moment also, and it needs another video. But this video is occupied already by him who I always felt closeness to, And then when I arrived in Compostela, I was amazed how connected I am. Second to Jerusalem. My connection to Compostela is far stronger than my connection to the Vatican, In the Vatican, I don't have a connection to the place. I have a connection to the people who are in the place, But in Compostela, there is a connection, me connected to that place itself, as if I'm a part of it, That's so weird. That is the most weirdest part of when I was there. I felt it, and it was an amazing moment because I arrived late in the evening and everyone was speaking Spanish. I was so hungry, and I think everything was so expensive. I'm trying to budget my finances, and everything is so expensive, and I'm so hungry. I'm so thirsty because this is the hostel I was staying, and then there was this I think a couple of not block, but it's a very near, it's a couple of meters away from that place is an eatery or a restaurant, but it's so expensive, So I decided, I think I just bought some water and some stuff. So I went to bed, because it's late already. And in the morning, very early, I do not know where the church was. I asked around, and then they said, just go straight and everything. And when I go straight, I found myself arriving at the side, not at the at the front. So I went in, I looked around, there's nothing extraordinary about the place. I didn't feel anything upon entering. And then I went to the crypt where the ossuary of St. James was located, and that's the thing also. There was nada, There was nada. There was nothing in that ossuary, and it made me feel weird because they said St. James remains is here, and there's nothing. So I felt, well, okay. Then I went up and asked around, and then there was this office near where I came in. And then there was this person who came out, and I asked him, is there a mass? And he said, oh, mass are per request. So there's no mass, And then he asked me where I'm from and everything. I said, I'm from the Philippines. And oh yeah, Cardinal Sin, something like that he mentioned. He was here, he visited, and blah, 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 blah. And then I said, oh yeah, okay. Oh yeah, he's the Archbishop of Manila, yeah, and then everything. And then I went back. And then all of a sudden, he advised me that there's a mass. And it's a full-blown mass, you know. And then I stayed at the front of the altar. And then something was activated within me, you know. All these men coming out in black with this mark of St. James in the chest. And each person that comes out, the intensity is building up within me, you know. And then all of a sudden, it was powerful. It's similar to the event in Vatican with the French guy, but multiplied with a lot, because there were several priests celebrating. And it was so powerful. I felt it, you know. And then all of a sudden, I'm connected to the place, you know, as if the place is alive, you know. It's like there is this being, and then the mass went on, and it was such a powerful moment. I felt so at home, you know, as if I was there forever, and yet that was the very first time I saw that church in my whole life. And then after the mass is over, there's this tradition wherein there's an embrace, you know. I don't know why there was this guy who was working. He was crying when he was seeing me. He was so happy, but he was crying. And he was crying and crying, and his crying is like he's happy to see someone. And yet I don't know him, and I say, perhaps he's just seen someone. And yet he was so kind to me, you know. And then he gave me this tampita, and then I just followed what the other party did before me, you know, embrace that image of St. James. And it is actually at that time I felt it, you know. I think his remains is in that image. I don't know, or somewhere there, but it's not in the ossuary. And now I realize, upon researching, that there is also a controversy on his remains, you know, because there was an event prior to somewhere in the history of that church, there was an event wherein his remains were hidden. And I think I have great reason to believe that his remains is in that image, because when I embraced it, there is something in that, unless that it carries a relic of him inside, but there's something in that image, you know, because as if I embrace someone who is known to me, and yet it's a piece of stone, you know, something like that. When I embraced it, and what is so remarkable is this guardian of that place was teary-eyed, you know, not teary-eyed, he was really literally crying, and he was so happy to see me, and he was crying. I don't know what his issue was, but he was so happy. And also those priests that was there was so, I don't know, they were so happy to see me there, you know. And then when I was about to leave, you know, and I went to adoration in the chapel, and there was this priest who did the benediction and everything. And then after the benediction, I know during the benediction our eyes caught each other, and he looked at me as if he knew me. And yet that was the only time I was there. And then when the activity or the liturgical activity was over, he approached me. We got a conversation, and he was asking me if I was Chinese, as if he was expecting a Chinese. I don't know what. And then I said, no, I'm Filipino. And then he mentioned something, and then he was so happy to see me. I've never felt that way, that another person was so happy to see me, a person whom I haven't even known or seen, and yet there's this elation you see in his eyes that he is so happy. And he was holding my hand and tightly and everything, and I was saying, and I said, oh, he went like, you are Chinese? He went like, no, I'm Filipino. And then he held my hand. Oh, nice. He was saying something in Spanish, and I just was nodding my head because I don't know if I understood it, but because he has this welcoming attitude towards me that really made me feel so welcome at that time, and I felt so comfortable with him. That's the weird thing. And in the place, it's so funny, and funny, and at the same time peaceful and everything. And then after that incident, because that's the last time I went to Fatima, and so I spent, I think, 10 hours, because from Compostela I think I took a train, and then from the train station I took the bus, and then after that another bus, yeah, before I arrived at Fatima, and I arrived late and everything was closed already. And I never, the Portuguese people are I don't know why, but I felt they were so nice, so welcoming. I made this notation on my writings that the most welcoming, and I'm very fond of our Portuguese nationals, because when I arrived there, I felt so welcome. I didn't even feel that I was Asian, and it was so a wonderful experience. I stayed in a hotel which is just very near the place. I actually didn't know how near it was until in the morning when I went out a few meters, and then I see already that square or courtyard where, outside the church, where the processions are done, and they were so kind. And then I stayed in the hotel, and then early in the morning I went, and then that's the time I actually went to the church, and I felt the same presence as I felt from him whom I visited in the Vatican crypt. And it was a beautiful moment. And then I went to the garden where the apparition happened, and that's where I encountered, actually, not that, because I didn't even talk to the priest, but as I don't know if he was there already, but he has this welcoming personality, and that's why I was very much elated also. And he was as if he was waiting for me there, and then all of a sudden disappear. And then when I went out, he went that fast. Perhaps he went around, but I don't want to put anything to it, but it's weird. Because when I reached there's a chapel at the end of this road. And that's where I actually met or saw or encountered the priest. When I entered, he was already smiling at me. So happy to see me. I don't know, every people that I met there was so happy to see me, Unlike when I was in Lourdes, they don't have that, because I think because French people are very reserved, and when I went to the cafe, they were all looking at me, the typical, but that I never felt that way when I was in Compostela and also in Fatima. No, I haven't felt that way. But when I was in Lourdes, that's the trademark of the French, And I think I'm like that also sometimes, That's why I felt that, whoa, I'm at the receiving end now, But because I think that's how I react also when someone I don't know comes in, and you kind of look at the person and try to, size them up, or, it's basically how those French persons there looked at me at the time. And it's so funny because that's how so that also gave me a circumstantial what do you call this? A circumstantial belief, because of that there is a French part of me, but I really admire the Portuguese because I never felt that way. They were so accommodating. Even the stores, ordinary people, they would literally smile at you, and you know that their smile is authentic. You could easily see persons smile at you, but they were just doing it just for the heck of smiling. But based on my experience with the Portuguese, they were smiling because they feel that they are happy to see. They make me feel that they are happy to see. And when I went to that place, and visit the house of the visionaries, I was able to say that it was a wonderful moment, but it was the procession. Actually, it was the procession that made me, and also that moment at the place where the apparition happened, where the angel appeared, if I'm not mistaken. It's like a grove of trees, and that is a place where I felt that for some reason or another, I've always reluctant to discuss this because of I feel so unworthy, and I feel so bad associating myself with her, and And that's why this is the only time I'm able to discuss this fully. But when I was in Fatima, there was this awareness that there is something in me or related to me that is connected to her, to Our Lady in so many ways. And I couldn't understand how is it possible, that there is this connection, me and with her. And back then was I couldn't, I struggle with it because one, I feel so unworthy even to associate myself to her, in a way that consciousness makes it, or that consciousness made me understand, that there is something that is there is, I am connected to her in some way. And it took me a while, and that's why this is the only time I'm actually discussing this, And when I was in Fatima, I felt it, and I always refer to that event, as if a part of me is connected to her. That's one. The second is, from that moment on, my understanding now kind of opened up. The events, like with Peter, like with Father John, like with, why do I feel the prayers? Because sometimes there are just people that comes in and they're praying, and it's kind of, putting all the pieces together in so many ways. And I felt so unworthy, or even to, how should I say it? I kind of struggle of even to conceive such a thought. But the evidence and certain events prior to that moment, which I try to ignore because that cannot be something like that. That's what I was fighting in my mind, and plus my form, And yet when I was there, all that feeling, although that I did not entertain it, in all honesty. It was only after that visit in Fatima did I kind of consider, perhaps, but I kept it all in my heart, and then the procession came, and it was something, it was something that I would always remember. And that is the event that actually made me consider the things that was, happening, that perhaps there is. And then plus when I pray, although I haven't mentioned this, it's when I pray, it's alone, and also at the church, it's like there is this vent of something that is opened up when I'm really in a prayerful and focused prayer, in a prayerful state, and I'm focusing on the prayer. It's happening, you know, and my connection with her is weird, you know. I struggled with it, you know, and that's why this is the only time I discussed it, you know. And the events in Fatima, although I could not fully explain what took place, it's just a simple event, but the consciousness that it accompanied was what was very controversial in so many ways. And that's why when, you know, each time, you know, they would pray to her, I would, if some a faithful who is really intently praying to the Blessed Mother, for some reason, something in me is activated. Similar to Peter, similar to Father John, similar to other individuals that I happen or chance upon, you know, praying, you know. And when it was starting, I had a struggle with it, you know. But after my visit in Fatima, I somehow, in a way, opened the door to consider it, you know, and just allow, not to struggle with it, just allow everything, you know, and let's see if it's true. Then that's my position, you know. If it's true, and everything that was made known is true, then there's nothing to fear, you know. And that's it. That's how it took place, and that's one takeaway that my visit in Fatima made, you know. And it's like making me consider it, you know, the possibility. And that's why when I realized the priests in Hawaiian Gardens are Marian priests. And I realized if a Marian priest or a Marian Mass or a votive Mass in honor of the Blessed Mother is the Mass. There was this Mass at the Abbey of Our Lady of Montserrat, you know, and other Masses. I kept quiet about it, you know, but I just wanted to, since I'm discussing it already, if the Mass is a votive Mass for the Blessed Mother, it's different. Something in me is activated, you know. It's like switched on, you know. And the vent, you know, from the moment the Mass started, it's like there is this vent that is open and it's blowing full all throughout the Mass, and sometimes it's intensifying, and it's so beautiful, you know, so beautiful. That's the difference, you know. If it's a Mass, an ordinary Mass, it's coming from within me, you know. It's going out. But if it's for the Blessed Mother, it's like, and this is the first time I would mention it, it's when that name the name of the Blessed Mother when it is called by someone who is very true to her, a part of me responds. It's like reacts to that, and that's why when I play those music, my flesh, when the Regina Celli is being sung by faithful, like the person who's singing it is really very much praying to the Blessed Mother, the opening, and then I feel, I don't want to, this was happening even before I went to Fatima. I just kept quiet about it, And her name, when someone calls on it, there's a part of me that reacts to it, which is something and plus the Dominicans, during the pandemic, the prior, I think, Father Roger, his connection, because he was the one who was celebrating that mass during the fiesta during the pandemic 2020, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And mind you, it's remote. And it was so intense. It was so intense. And also last year, that's why I thought it's all over already, because with Pierre Batista Pizzabala celebrating the Mass of Our Lady of Palestine, and I couldn't imagine how in the world that experience would be possible, It's similar to the experience I experienced from Roger, because it was also remote, but it's here, but that one is far. It's in Palestine. It's in Israel. And these are the things that really, before my visit to Fatima, I was struggling with it, but when I visited Fatima, it's like there's this, if it is true, I have no business in meddling with it. You just let it be, let itself be. That's why when each time the Regina Celli is, I don't know, they're Salve Regina, because when I Google to here in Concepcion, in the Carmel Monastery, it happens there. That's why there are 3 priests who are able to open the pen. One is Edsel, the other one is this big guy, another one who is, I think, Burgos, his last name, or Borja, I cannot remember, but he's assigned here in the seminary. And mind you, because at the end they were singing Regina, Salve Regina. Normally, if it's an ordinary thing, there's, a part of my flesh reacts to the song, but it's not consistently that it has that intensity, but for some priest, and when that is sung and that priest is, perhaps that piece is very a devotee of the Blessed Mother, and that's why it's different. There's this vent opening, and there's this flash of air and everything, and my body is radiating, like small strips of air is coming out from every part of out, even on my sole of my feet, on the top of my crown, it's happening, and it's happening. It happened several times here and I feel the prayers of the sisters, especially if I'm properly disposed. Upon entering, I could sense them, I could feel them. And then it depends on the priest who's celebrating it, when it was Edsel, I didn't expect it to be that way, because there were several times I'm there and nothing is happening. They will just sing the Regina de Salve Regina, and then it's over. There was this a little reaction on my part, on my flesh, but it's not as intense. But when it was Edsel and that big guy, and then that, I think it's Borja or Burgos. It's there's a vent, and because they would be praying this prayer, and I'm radiating, and then the vent is full. It's a full package experience, and I just tried to be not affected anymore and try to act as if nothing is happening, But I think they know. I don't know how, but based on how they look, perhaps they're feeling it also. I cannot, they're the only person that can validate it. In Manila, there was also like that, because it was happening, and normally and that's also during feast days of the Blessed Mother, I often wondered why in the world I'm visited by this beautiful presence, and as if some force or some energy is visiting me, and that events were happening, and then there are these feast days of hers, especially the event in Israel. That is the one thing that really shook me, because when the Magnificat Anima Mea was being sung, OMG, it was in 2010 during the ordination of a Brazilian Our Lady of Zion priest. He was, it's very different. And then they were singing this song, and then I felt this beautiful moment all throughout that duration of when the song was, as if a part of me is reacting to it, and even afterwards, already the celebration has ended, I'm still, consumed by the presence, I think it's activated by those who are praying and close to her, who, like Father John, like Father Peter, when they pray the rosary, it's I'm activated in so many ways, and I don't know, but after, as I said, after the visit in Fatima, I kind of stopped struggling and just let it be, and just, if everything is true, then the truth shall stand on its own. I don't have to either encourage it, I don't have to convince myself about it. If it's the truth, it is the truth. That is the only thing. And the events related to her, like the feast days, and what I notice is when it's her feast day, I often see that, I'm a little bit jovial, and a part of me is very much happy. And I don't know, it's been a while since that event thing happened, and when I was in Guimaras, each night we will be singing that song, and each moment is as if a part of me is responding. A part of me is recognizing whatever is being said, and then there's this hymn that is always sung, during special occasions. It is so, that part of me is very activated, And I guess, I don't know if Vince feels it, and Father, I forgot, Brother, I forgot his name, because they're beside me. I don't know if they feel it, because I radiate, and when the song is being sang, well, I guess that's it. And Fatima is the place where I kind of found peace in so many ways, and have been decided, just let it be, if it's the truth, it's the truth. I don't have to worry about it, and it's not that the only thing that I avoid is, because other people might think something else that might be not what it is, and that's what I'm trying to avoid. That's why I don't react even. But there's times when I went like this, because it's beautiful, but it's kind of, especially during winter, or it's cold. But now it's summer, so if it's happening, I don't do this like this, because it's okay, because it's hot, But that's the remarkable thing. If it's so hot, and then all of a sudden I am engulfed with this beautiful soft breeze, like an air condition. It's much beautiful than an air condition, because it's as if it has its mind of its own, and it's engulfing me, and making me experience all this. And then the vent thing, oh my gosh, it starts with Edsel, the big guy. It started when the Salve Regina is immediately sung, because normally there's no vent. My body, it just reacts, when the song is being sung, But sometimes they're uneven, especially if the priest is. It depends on who's celebrating, honestly. I think my analysis is, if the priest is a devotee, like Father John, I realized that he's an OMB, Oblates of the Virgin Mary, and the other priests that are very connected are either Marian priests. So that's how I analyzed it, and what is so peculiar is how they do that opening. Are they that's my what's running in my mind. Are they conscious that they are opening that, or it's just that they are praying and that is an involuntary reaction or response of what on my end, because I have no control over it, It's been and I realized that it was because I wasn't conscious about it before, and now when I look back and I see and put things together, it was happening a long time ago. And that's why when I transitioned, I couldn't imagine, but I'm her, the face that I'm seeing, it's this face, although the skin of that deaf lady is fairer and much smoother, but in totality, this is the face that is hers, especially when I go like this, the side. And I've seen her several times when I was young, but I forgot about it, and then when I was in 2019, I saw she looks like my sister and my niece, as I mentioned, and this is her face. I don't know, but if it's true, it's the truth. And I cannot argue with the truth, but as far as I'm concerned, until my prayer is that, every doubt in me be removed, so that I'm able to function fully as who I am really, and I invite you also to pray for that, because I guess I have a role to play, and I just don't know what it is yet, but I just have an idea about it, and I just let time, and in God's time and by His hand, the things that must come to pass comes to pass. It's already 1 hour and 30 minutes, so that's the story about Fatima, a story about a man whom I've never met and yet very much connected to me, and that man is Wojtyła, who's also known as Pope John Paul II the Great. And with this, I bid you all a happy evening. Thank you. Tata, it's April 22.